Hello, everyone. Thanks for dropping into my channel. Just going to do a quick segment here on American recording producer, engineer, musician, arranger, living legend Tony Visconti. Tony Visconti is, you can see by his name, is of Italian descent. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, I believe, in April 1944, or he's actually raised in Brooklyn as well. Started out recording things at home. It just got his interest and his talent for recording and musicianship just got bigger and bigger. He actually toured with I believe it's a doo-wop band out of New York called the Crew Cuts. I have a bunch of their 45s, but I didn't show them. He didn't record with them. I think he was just with the touring band. And then from there, he met some prominent people in the business, was invited over to London, met Mark Bolan and of T-Rex, and the rest is just a legendary, almost 60-year, 6-decade career of, like I said, producing, engineering, playing, singing, backup singing, musician. He's a trained orchestral musician, multi-talented, and Tony Visconti is just great. I'm actually on a friend of his through Facebook. He doesn't know me, I know him, but I've joined his Facebook page on Facebook, and I've commented a few times. And just the other day, I was playing some Irish records for St. Patrick's Day, and I pulled out my Phil Lennox solo record, and I remember my mentor out there, Tony. Tony's probably watching. When I said what a great recording this is, what a great sound, what a great production the first Phil Lennox solo record is, he said, "Oh, that's a Tony Visconti record," and Tony loves Tony Visconti. So because of that, I went back and I started to learn what records that in my collection that Tony either engineered, produced, or did both and played on. He played on Bowie records, did a number of records. I'm going to show a few here. Did a number of T-Rex records, did Moody Blues records. I believe the number is staggering. 2,000 records produced over 55, 60 years. He's had his creative hand in some of the most creative and most wonderful and albums and records that are going to live on forever. They're just classics, and I'm going to go over a few of them. And if you don't know Visconti, look him up. And he's just a wonderful man because, like I said, I'm on his Facebook page for some time now, so I'm able to, get into his vibe, and such a family man. Lives in New York, goes to shows just like you and I do. It's just amazing, and his technique of producing an artist, he doesn't impose his will onto the artist. He coaxes the artist or the band or the singer or the whatever into doing what they could do best. He knows what they could do best, and he does it with honey. He doesn't do it with vinegar. Actually, if you think about what a movie director does is he's trying to get the best out of his actors without alienating them, without making them feel small. He's not a screamer. There are directors that scream and yell, and in the long run, they're not going to be successful because certain people don't want to work with them. But I think everyone, after they've seen his results, wanted to work with Tony Visconti. He, like I said, he's classically trained, so he adds a little bit of classical music to a lot of his arrangements. He arranges, he sings backup. He played on Bowie records. He sung backup. I believe he was with the Bowie Berlin trilogy, the Low and Lodger, and those records. I'm going to show a few of those. Let me see here. It was just amazing doing the research. And like I said, like a good movie director, he just somehow gets the best out of his artists, and that's a true talent. I've managed people at my job, and it's not always easy. Some folks you have to use psychology. Some folks you could just go out and say to them, "This is what you need to do," and they'll do it. Like a football coach, Bill Parcells. They said that Bill Parcells knew how to play each player like a violin. If a player needed to be yelled at, boom. If a player needed to be praised, boom. If a player needed to be coddled or babied or just, whatever, he was able to do. And I think that's the type of record producer that Mr. Visconti was and still is. He's still actually working. So we're going to go through some of his records, and I'll talk a little bit about the records as I go through them. Now, this was one of his first. He first worked with Mark Bolan, and he actually met Mark at a session somewhere, gave him his card, said, "I'm a producer." Didn't think anything of it. Mark Bolan was a little bit aloof and said, "Yeah, I've got, a million requests to produce me." I guess Mark was playing either in a little venue or outdoor session or whatever. And lo and behold, a few days later, Mark called Tony up in his office in London or London, England, and invited him up, and he auditioned, and of course, the rest is history. And I believe one of the first ones he did with T-Rex was this great record, Ride a White Swan. And this is an import. This is a EMI import for us in the U.S. And this is a great T-Rex record. And the next record, or the big record he did for T-Rex, and this actually put T-Rex and Tony Visconti on the map, and that's this unbelievable, timeless album, which I just cherish. The Inner. This is an original Warner. A few years ago, there was a reissued double 45 Mobile Fidelity, which I strongly recommend. It goes in and out of press. I bought mine. I put it on back order, and I finally got one a few years ago, and it's just fabulous. But this is a fabulous record in its own right. Just sounds so good, and it just shows you that, of course, you need the artist, but you also need that production value. You also need that engineer to take it to that level where the record is not just a record; it's a timeless piece of magic, a timeless piece of artwork, and just an amazing legacy that it leaves behind. And without me forgetting this, I wanted to point out that he also has at least 2 Grammys that I know about. One was for the last album that Bowie did while he was living, and that's the Dark Star album, which I'm going to show you. So we basically won a Grammy for that. And just, like I said, just an amazing legacy. And he also did engineering and arranged this record. He also did the Badfinger, as when they were the Ivies. He did one of their records, which I don't have in my collection. But this is on Apple, the famous Magic Christian. And, of course, Ringo's in this. And let me see who's in this. Ringo. I just know Ringo's in it. I know Peter Sellers, I believe, is in this record as well. And that's when they all became friends. That's a great Badfinger record. This is an original Apple with Shrink. Next up, I have one of my favorite bands, Irish bands. We talked about them the other day. Thin Lizzy, Phil Lenox. He did a couple of Thin Lizzies, Black Rose, which is a really good album. I believe he also did a live record for them. And when he actually made the deal with Phil Lenox to do a live record, he was perplexed when he received tapes from all over the place, you know, tapes on different formats. The pitch was out of line. They were out of tune. He said 20% of the record of the live and dangerous record, 20% of the record is live, and 80% is overdubs. But Tony had to put that together. And this is a promo. As you can see, it has a little sticker on it. And I'll show you the, because I pulled the inner. And next up, I'm going to show you the Phil Lynott, which I always talk about. This is a tremendous record. This has the King's Call. Phil Lynott was a huge Elvis fan, as most people in the UK at that time and to today are and was. And he does the King's Call on here. It's just a haunting, beautiful record. This is just an insert that was there for a Warner Brothers advertisement. But Phil Lynott and Tony did that. Tony also did the orchestrations of and for on Band on the Run for Paul. And Paul hired him, trusted him. He was relatively new in the business at the time, you know, in a few years. And Paul would only give him hints of where the music was going to be laid in on the record, the orchestrations. And Tony goes on to say that I think Paul didn't want to give me the whole recording to work on because he thought I may, leak the records or get them out to his friends and things like that. And Tony said I would never do that, but he doesn't blame Paul. Paul didn't know him that well, but this is one of my favorite Wings records, of course. And the orchestrations were done by Tony Visconti. And before I forget, I just want to thank everyone for watching. And I'm just trying to lay down some interesting segments for you that you may not know about. You know, I've been collecting records for over 50 years now, probably more. I'm getting up there in age. But I just want to thank everyone for subscriptions. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It really helps us out. And here's another one that he did, a few Boomtown Rats, and here's one, Boomtown Rats. This record is called or titled Mondo Bongo. Mondo Bongo. It's a pretty good record. I haven't listened to it in a while. This actually comes with a custom inner, and it actually is pretty cool because there's a really nice poster in here that folds up pretty big. And that's Mondo. And this is a Tony Visconti record as well. And like I said, Tony actually chimes in on a lot of these records. He either plays bass, tambourine, backup. He actually did some records for the Sparks. He did, like I said, the Ivies, Moody Blues, over 2000. Did some newer things that I don't have. I have my record collection is basically older stuff, stuff that's considered classic rock. He did a lot of Bowie records, and I'm going to show you some of those. This was the last one he did for Bowie. He did some post-death Bowie records later on, but this is the one that's my one of my prizes, a sealed copy of Dark Star, because I have this on disc as well. And it's a funny story. When Bowie passed away, Dark Star had dropped either a few days before or at the same time. Like Bowie had it all planned out. And I said, oh, I have to get that record. Then I went on to order one, and they were all sold out, and the records were going for astronomical prices for me anyway, $100, $80. And I wasn't going to spend that. So I go over to Barnes & Noble's, and I'm looking around. It's not in their racks, because its racks are, you could look through their racks in basically 10 minutes. So I go behind, I asked the woman at the counter. She goes, oh, yeah, I have one under the counter. So I actually had an original David Bowie's last record, still done an original OG for just the list price of $30. Here's one of my favorite Bowies that Tony did. Tony also played on this record as well. That's the funky but chic Young Americans. And you all know this record. I believe this is 75, 76, something like that. Tony Visconti. And of course, another grail of mine, the original press of The Man Who Sold the World, Tony Visconti. One of the early ones he did for Bowie. He went on, like I said, to probably do, I would say, over 10 records for Bowie. Also did a live album. Here you have Tony Visconti, electric bass, piano, guitar. This is with Mick Ronson. Just a wonderful record. It's the original cover on Mercury. You can see this was a cutout. And of course, David Bowie Low. And I also bought these. I had one of the trilogy, and based on my good pal Tony, another Tony, recommends, he goes, you got to get the Berlin trilogy. So I ended up getting a reissue on Parlophone of Low. I think I might have an original also. Looks like The Man Who Fell to Earth. Tony Visconti is also playing on it. And one of my favorite Bowies, an OG, Scary Monsters. And Visconti said that working with Paul, doing orchestrations and working with Moody Blues was a thrill for him because he got to use his orchestral chops. So he really dug that. It was a lot different from working with, say, Badfinger. And he also indicated that in the interviews that I read online, that his idols growing up, or his heroes, were Beethoven, I believe he said Beethoven, and George Martin. So Ludwig van Beethoven and George Martin. He said that Revolver basically taught him everything he needed to know about what he wanted a recording to sound like. And he also trained by watching and hanging out with Glyn Johns, Peter Grant of Olympic Studios, and Malcolm Taft. And he said he was never a tea boy, which meant he was never the guy to get the jam and toast or the coffee, or back in England, of course, it was tea. He was thrown right into the water. He was thrown right into the deep end. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And it's just a gift from God to be able to have the ear and to basically be able to bring in, digest, and then expound on what the artist's intent was, what the artist is happy with. Because if the artist isn't happy, you could talk them into being happy. A lot of times record sales will make them happy, but at that point in the recording process, producer, director, arranger, you need that skill, like I said, like a great movie director, to get out the best out of your people. And these people work, 10, 12 hours a day. Tony said he started at 8 o'clock in the morning, may work till 9 o'clock at night, like a 12-hour day. A couple of breaks. He would go on to say that if an artist is having a tough time, can't hit that note, can't play that tune the right way, encourages them, gives them a break, saying, take a walk, do this. Bowie used to, when Bowie was tensed up, he used to bring in, I guess on a video recorder or a portable video machine, Monty Python skits, and Bowie would get into the Monty Python, world with the comedy, that British humor, which I love. And he would go right back to work and he would knock it out of the park. Here's another one, Heroes. Tony said he enjoyed working on Heroes. I think he just enjoyed Bowie. And he's also on background vocals on this. And he's also on engineering on this. So this is Bowie, and produced Bowie and Tony also engineered it. which is really amazing. And here's the last one I'm going to show, a Dynaflex, and you can see the label there, Diamond Dogs. Just a great record. Let me go over some of my stuff here. And he also, what I also read about Tony is he works with headphones. When he was young, growing up in New York, the houses are kind of close together. He may have been in an apartment. So he said he was able to work with headphones. And by working with headphones, he's able to determine the right sonic somehow. And I think the way I actually read it, I think he still prefers in a final mix headphones. And he also does engineering mixes, and that's what a producer does. And he's in charge of everything. He's in charge of hiring. He's in charge of the studio. He's in charge of catering. He's in charge of the equipment. He's in charge of the backup singers if you need backup people. He's basically a do-it-all, and that's a producer. And each producer has different skills, may have assistants, but it's a big job. And when you're doing it for 55 years and you're still doing it, kind of means you were successful. He's had a very interesting life. He was married, I believe, 3 times. After his first wife, he married Linda Hopkins, who was on Apple. Those were the days, my friends. Apple recording, a Welsh female singer. And then he married May Pang. Yes, that May Pang. And now he's got a beautiful relationship with a young lady in New York City, I believe. And I think his children are in the area as well. Because like I said, I'm on the Facebook with him. But this is just my little tribute to another Tony Visconti. So I hope if he ever gets to see this, he enjoys it. I know I missed. It's not that I missed anything. I just hope I didn't make any errors in what I believe his philosophy is, because I think his philosophy is, treat everyone like you want to be treated as far as your job goes, and that's not a bad way to go about life. So that's it. And once again, thanks for all your support. Thank you for the subscriptions. And if you haven't subscribed, really appreciate it if you can. So keep rocking and check out these records. If you see Tony Visconti on a record, just like if you see a Robert Ludwig listed on the record as a mastering engineer, you're going to have chances are you're going to have a really good sounding record. So that's it. So thanks a lot. And I'm glad I got this off my chest. And I will see you later. Keep rocking. Stay safe. Tony's LPs are us signing out. Bye-bye.